And while we're waiting, you can see the images that Daniela is showing of the exhibition.
I'm going to spotlight that for everyone.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
For those who have just joined, would you mind explaining some of the artworks, the collaboration?
Yeah, so right now we're looking at the originals of the plant card plants, plant cards. Sorry, I always get confused with that. So we have developed these 20, a set of cards of 20 plant cards, and these are some of them, the originals. Here we have the work of Sam and Nandita and myself.
So as we're beginning, we're doing a little walkthrough of the gallery in Quito, Ecuador, where the work is being exhibited right now.
Mm-hmm. Yes, at Espacio Arte Actual, which is the gallery of the University of Latin American Studies, FLACSO. So here we have a set of works that were completed during the Warm Farm Institute residency. You can see them. It's 5 pieces that are completely intervened by the 4 of us, Sam, Patricia, and I, who were at the residency. And then we kind of conjured Nandita's energy with her collage pieces. And we collaged actually her papers in some parts of the work.
Also, I'd like to add that the ink that we use the pagoda tree outside the farmhouse at Warm Farm. We fermented the seeds from the pagoda tree, and then we make the ink. So this ink is from this tree from the farm as well.
Want to say?
So we are going to continue having these images showing as we continue our introductions and thank yous and acknowledgements. So use this as a visual centering. Everyone, we appreciate you making time probably after a very busy day to come and join us for this time and center maybe visually first with the works and then as an invitation to engage with ideas and words.
Thank you, Nandita. While you are looking at these beautiful collaborative works, I would like to thank Espacio Arte Actual FLACSO, its director, Paulina León, Gabriela Arroyo, Daniela Falconi, Sandra Navas, and the Strange Tools Research Lab at University of Cincinnati, Ohio. I would like to thank Donna and Jay and Dejan for being with us, and of course the plant contingent. We are so happy to have you here and all the people who are with us right now. Thank you so much for being with us today.
I'm going to give you a brief outline of our agenda for this panel. It will be approximately 75 minutes. First, I'll introduce our panelists and the first group, and I'll pose a question or what we call a note of inquiry for them to respond to. And so we will take questions and comments and time for discussion after all the panelists have spoken. And so if you do have a question or comment, go ahead and put it in the chat and I will gather those, or just save them for the end. We'd really like to engage everybody in a conversation at the end. So let me start with the introductions. First, we have Jay Salinas and Donna Newworth. They are artists and farmers deeply committed to exploring how art and agriculture can contribute to the rural-urban social and biological diversity. They are co-founders of the Worm Farm Institute, where some of this artwork was made. Their journey into this unique intersection began in 1993, driven by a yearning for change and an anticipatory embrace of emerging local food movements. They departed from Chicago, their city of origin, and set their sights on Wisconsin's driftless region. Their farm is an art laboratory for fermenting social and cultural change. Their endeavor took root in cultivating organic vegetables for a community-supported agriculture, CSA, initiative, and a belief in the power of art. Next, we have Dr. Dejan Lukic. He's an anthropologist by training with a PhD from Columbia University, and also, as many of us know him, a beloved professor of philosophy with the Institute for Doctoral Studies in the Visual Arts. His diverse and interdisciplinary research portfolio encompasses continental philosophy, science, religion, and the fascinating intersection of art and ecology. His work is marked by a commitment to multi-ontology, exploring multiple coexisting realities beyond the human. Dr. Lukic's contributions extend beyond academia, as he has authored 2 significant books and penned numerous catalog essays for art exhibitions that probe the depths of contemporary thought. He is currently immersed in creating a multi-volume manuscript entitled Deranged Vivarium, Variations on Coexistence, which promises new insights into the coexistence of diverse elements in our complex world to understand the intricate relationships between art, nature, and eco-aesthetics. And the third panelist or group of panelists, our panelists are many as one, are myself, Nandita Baxi-Sheth, Anna, and Patricia and Sam. We are an artist-philosopher collective working across the United States and Ecuador. We use synchronous and asynchronous processes to explore how to be and think and make together and apart. We represent a range of cultural origins, academic fields, and creative practices. And we develop connections over time, place, and through various artistic and intellectual media. Our ideas emerge organically, elucidating different ways of living and translating ourselves into the future. We engage with the messy and beautiful entanglements and extensions of the plant world and seek to create and facilitate situations to encourage others to do so with us. So, one of the ways a plant contingent opens ourselves to other ontologies is through plant thinking. Instead of looking to another realm, we allow a plant being to guide our hands. Our practice incorporates automatic processes, but instead of focusing inward to the subconscious, we draw upon the energy of the plant and spontaneous responses to becoming with plants. We are entangled with the tradition of the spiritual seance and the knowledge and wisdom of Andean and Amazonian yachangs and vegetalistas from South America and their relationship with the vegetal world. Thank you to everyone for participating today. And I'm going to let the continue the imagery of the artwork. And I will pose our first question to the panelists, Jay and Donna from the Worm Farm Institute. So, art is at the intersection of the human and non-human biocentric turn. What does art have to do with the possibility of a turn towards a planet beyond humans? And specifically, I think where you all have worked very extensively, what insights can be gleaned from the art of fermentation, microbial transformation, and how it concerns the concepts of death and rebirth? And how have you thought about how these processes, their ethical and aesthetic implications?
Thank you, Nandita, for this opportunity to share our experience with you. I'm Jay Salinas. Donna, we've agreed that I'll go first here and handle the first part of the inquisitive the mode, and then Donna will follow up with the fermentation stuff. So anyway, I wanted to start by sort of tweaking your initial question about art at the intersection of human and non-human biocentric turn, and I would put actually farmers in there also, maybe primarily. I think that farmers and agriculture are the interlocutors between the human and non-human world, that they engage directly with the elemental forces, you know, the rain and the mud and the life and death, and use that, harness those energies, those primal forces, in order to create, you know, concentrated packets of energy that we take into our body in a type of communion. So I'm putting the artists in between, I mean, farmers in between the non-human world and the human world. So, but where art comes in, I think artists have the responsibility, the charge to give meaning to those actions beyond the need to derive our nutrition from natural resources, natural sources. So they tell the story about what farmers do. They create metaphor. They find meaning and patterns in the work that those who till the soil do, and work daily with these life and death and the forces of nature. I always like to come back to a quote by the artist Christian Boltanski, who I had the privilege of hearing speak. And at one point during his talk, he said that all great and lasting art is about sex, death, and religion, which got a big laugh at the time. But then when you thought about it for a little bit, it's like, yeah, I guess that seemed entirely plausible. So what I have gleaned from my experience and my training and work as an artist and my vocation as a grower is that that is one of the things that art and farming have in common, is that they both deal with sex, death, and religion. And so, you know, I mean, a farmer's daily existence is to engage in the reproductive behavior, reproductive behaviors of a myriad of creatures, whether they're plant or animal, you know, bringing them to the brink of sexual maturity or controlling the breeding, and then at a certain point killing them and chopping them up and eating them. And so they, you know, there doesn't get much more primal than that. But then the sharing that food and coming together around table to share this bounty from the few who feed the many, I think that's where the cultural piece is from that point that the cultural piece emerges, and the artist interpretive capacities are brought to play and to find sense there. So that's the first part. The other one, the possibility of a turn toward a planet beyond humans. So I think one of the things that we're learning more and more as we practice agriculture is we're seeing a turn toward this more natural perennialized agriculture. You know, some people call it permaculture. We're calling it regenerative agriculture, where these agricultural systems more closely mimic natural systems. They're perennialized, or grass-based, or tree-based, and this is sort of contrary to the way that agriculture has been practiced for most of the past, 10,000 years, where it's been this, especially in annual crops, this clearing, this catastrophic impact on the earth. You clear all the other plants that were there, and then you install your own annual plants that require tending, and this annual turning of the soil is a pretty significant burden upon the soil and the natural world. And we're finding that these more perennialized systems are not only have the capacity to feed humans, but also are healing for the planet, and now even implicated in helping to reduce the carbon. They can sequester carbon, these systems. And so again, these are moving toward things that are much more natural and don't require human beings to be on top of them every day, removing all the non-commercial vegetation. These are things that are set up to sort of transcend the human input. So, I mean, one of the things that's really interesting about this, and where we're called upon as artists, is that we have colleagues and peers and collaborators who are working on these systems, and they look to us, Worm Farm, and the folks that we work with, to help them translate the results of their research, their on-the-ground research, into ways that can communicate it more effectively and in a more compelling way to not only the farmers, but also the public at large. And that's, I mean, it's been a really interesting place to find ourselves now that, we've always valued our cross-sector collaborations, but none have ever felt quite as natural as this. So I guess
it's about 5 minutes.
Okay, very good. I will turn the rest of it over to Donna then.
All right. Well, I'm taking the fermentation question. Since 2011, we've been doing an annual fermentation fest that we call a live culture convergence. So live culture in all its forms, everything from dance to yogurt and poetry to sauerkraut. Coming into being presenters of a festival about fermentation happened almost accidentally. But what we discovered along the way is that fermentation is about abundance and transformation. So whether it's from grain to beer, or milk to cheese, or cabbage to kimchi, this natural process is somewhat curated and creates strong flavors, dense nutrients, long shelf life, and in some cases, altered states of consciousness. It's essentially controlled rot, but it's still rot. And the metaphors of that are the thing that Jay mentioned, that we sort of latch onto and expand beyond the vegetal world. Fermentation happens in kitchens and fields and crocks and vats, but it also happens in communities, that kind of abundance and transformation, and the idea that it is a process that is tended and carefully respected. But basically it's extending the rot time so you can extract the delicious nutrients that happen in a short window before it turns to slime, like all of us. And so it's somewhat of a reminder in the human community, and we call we refer to that as social probiotics. So the dense nutrients that come out of the fermentation process is through that transformation of one sort of thing to another. I'm not the person to explain the science to you, But the metaphor is a rich one. And the social probiotics are what the community needs in order to, it's sort of an agitation and a starter culture that needs to be tended and fed. The ferment needs to be fed just like we need to be fed. And but it also brings the awareness of essentially it will rot and die. But because of the bubbles and the festivity and the altered state of consciousness in the meantime, it allows us to talk about these things using different languages, such as the arts. And the way we got to know some of the plant contingent was because we run an artist residency program that you heard about. And when Patricia applied to be a resident, she talked about the fermenting products in Ecuador and about the members of the community chewing on the leaves and spitting into a communal cup. And we, of course, had to have her here. And it's something about the discovery. If you're in one field or another and you discover something in a different field that feels brand new, and like fermentation was that for me. I didn't know anything about those things. But when you put it in front of artists, all kinds of things happen, and those metaphors are explored in depths and ways that we never ever could have imagined, and had led to the seansorium of all things that actually has a kind of a logical trajectory. And the idea of Jay was talking about the intense monocultures, and that we have to get back to a polyculture, and you're talking about poly life forms, and that we're all connected. So we know that through fermentation in our guts. We know that there's more beings living within us than near us. And so I think that all those understandings and all those curiosities, and especially because they're so visceral and ephemeral, lead us to other realizations. And I think perhaps that is an underappreciated resource.
Thank you so much, Donna and Jay. You have a lot of idea fermentation, I know, probably going on with everybody, but I feel like my mind is bubbling with a lot of thoughts. So I'm glad that we'll be able to have questions and chat with you at the end and engage interactively. Next, I have another inquiry or a series of questions for Dr. Lukic. So can intentional, instead of can, maybe I'll say how might intentional creative practices incorporate ethical and spiritual considerations, specifically to mend broken relationships between humans and non-humans? How does reevaluating spirituality, decay, and eco-aesthetics offer a pathway to cultivate an alternative ontological consciousness? Donna mentioned the seansorium. Does the seansorium's claim of thinking with plants entail and challenge the potential for anthropocentrism and essentialism when thinking beyond the human? You'll need to unmute.
Thank you, Nandita. Now that I hear these questions, I feel terrified to even thinking to provide the answers. I think if I could provide the answers, maybe I would get a Nobel Prize. I'm not sure, but I will attempt to give you, some maybe perhaps seeds from these vast fields that you opened up here with these questions. I also want to thank you for inviting me in the first place, giving that beautiful biography introduction of me, which I would never dare to write myself. And I want to preface this that I did not really, but thank you for those compliments. I can only speak kind of from a nebular zone. I think the Worm Farm Institute and the plant contingent are really, you know, having their hands in the soil, and they both teams can teach us a lot. I can just share some perhaps definitions, insights about words, and hope that they will be helpful. So in light of, you know, your question of mending broken relationships, I think the word mending here is the most important for me, because it's a form of alteration, amelioration, rectification, and in some sense rejuvenation. And this, I think, is more important than thinking about broken relationships. I was trying to think about a mischievous answer here, and what I realized is that plants did not need us. They did not need a relationship with us. As a matter of fact, we became who we are because of them. So you know, they are the initiators of this relationship, if you want to call it that. And I'm thinking here of the writings of Lauren Isley, who one of the plant contingent members introduced me to, and just his kind of consciousness, geological consciousness, if you will, and showing me summarizing the span of millions of years and what occurred in those millions of years. So land plants, as you might know, appeared 500 million years ago on our planet. Flowering plants 130 million years ago. Okay, human being was nowhere near it. And the fact that human being occurred is because those flowering plants increased oxygen in the atmosphere. So mammals, warm-blooded animals could exist, and higher, faster metabolism developed. And so creatures like humans could appear. But it really strikes me when I look at this enormous span of millions of years, that it is the plants that devise the life and the diversity of life that emerged on this planet. So, you know, we are kind of the aftermath in this incredible, massive development and an explosion that lasted for millions of years, when plants developed flowers and seeds and were able to spread them and figured out how to spread them. So, you know, when we think about relationships, it feels like, you know, there as if there's a reciprocal relationship here. I don't think that's the case. I think we come in the aftermath and as an afterthought of plants. Now, this is not to say that, of course, we don't have the power to decimate them and destroy them. As we're destroying the levels of the oxygen, we're destroying everything, all the different forms of life on the planet. So this is why the work that you all do is so interesting and fascinating to me, because, you know, even this excitement I think that we all share towards decay is precisely because in this materiality, in all the chemical processes that occur in decay and fermentation, is really where life bursts out. So I just want to, you know, mention that to me, decay is fascinating because of bursting of life that comes out of it. I think I'm not exaggerating. I hope I'm not exaggerating there, but you can correct me if I am. So, you know, to mend is very important, but I think, you know, mending not just in an ethical and aesthetic way, but mending in a way in which we reconnect with the plant life so as to change ourselves, so as to alter ourselves. So this alteration is really what interests me, and that's also part of your second question of cultivating an alternative ontological consciousness. Again, I think that all of you with your work are cultivating that alternative consciousness. This is a very difficult thing, of course, for human beings, probably the most difficult thing. It's hard to even define what constitutes consciousness. Neuroscientists are struggling to define it just in terms of the brain. But, you know, for us, if we're thinking in terms of beyond the brain and on the scale of the planet or on the scale of other non-human entities, what is this collective consciousness or collective unconsciousness, whatever you want to call it? To me, if the Gaia theory is even somewhat true, and I think it is true that the planet is self-organizing, self-sustaining system, then there has to be some form of collective consciousness as well, which is shared between different entities. So certainly, you know, work of art, which is, I think, sharpening sensibilities, and experimentation with farming, which are materially embedding us into the processes that occur, is altering our consciousness. So this is happening, and I do think it's absolutely necessary. But to what end? Not just to have a relationship with the other entities, but to actually change ourselves. Jay has mentioned a quote that he liked. I also thought about the poet that I love, Portuguese famous poet Fernando Pessoa, who was saying that human being has to substitute their own self. It has to be substituted with something else. And I like that word, substituting, because it leads to some kind of multiplication. So plants or engagement with other entities, to me, initiates substitution and multiplication of myself, if I can speak like that philosophically for a minute. So those are just to touch on some of these terms like decay and mending, which I thought were crucial. And then in the last question, you mentioned with the sensorium in particular, the challenge of anthropomorphism and essentialism. And this is something that has been discussed recently, and maybe not just recently, in great details. And we are quick to dismiss any type of engagement that looks anthropomorphic immediately. And of course, anthropomorphism is silly. It's attributing human characteristics to plants or animals or objects or gods. But it is still a form of animation. It is animating things that we didn't consider have life. So in that regard, I just want to give it a little bit of a positive light, because it initiates the transfer of characteristics and features between a person, a human, and a non-human, let's say. And that transfer of features and characteristics, I think, is the essential for the transformation of the consciousness that I was saying earlier. How do we change consciousness of people, let's say, ontological, as you say, by changing the traits and features? We change the essence or the substance of the person or of the thing. So in that regard, you know, it's good because it initiates the transfer. It's of course bad because it's implementing human characteristics, which is totally unnecessary and childish. But the sheer transfer, I think is great. It leads to some kind of transmogrification, metamorphosis that we see many writers talked about in literature, and artists exemplified as well. Do I still have time?
No, but I let you go on because it was so good.
This is great. This is perfect. I'll stop here. You know, I really, you know, I'm so happy to be here. All of your work is populated with these themes, concepts, and concerns. So I'm very happy to be in the midst of this. Thank you.
Thank you. And I put if anyone's interested, the essay, How Flowers Change the World by Lauren Isley in the chat. And of course, there's a lot more work by Lauren Isley, but that's, I think you were mentioning flowers. So
that's what I was referring to. Exactly.
Let's move on. Thank you so much. And you've given us a lot more idea fuel for fermentation, for questions and chat later. So thank you so much. Next, the members, 3 members of the plant contingent will be talking about the concepts of death and decay through their research topics: becoming soil, blossoming, and wild care.
Thank you. Thank you, Nandita. Thank you, Jay, Donna, and Dejan. So it's very hard to follow up after that. I'm sorry, I have an echo. So I'm going to talk about, I'm kind of going to piggyback a little bit on decay and fermentation through the concept of becoming soil. So what is becoming soil? On one sense, becoming soil refers to the fact that all living matter eventually decomposes and returns to the ground. Yes, but also it's much more than that. Becoming soil is a multi-directional ethical and aesthetic approach that capitalizes on soil regenerative properties and dirt latent state. Becoming soil is a collaborative effort supported by biological, social, and scientific approaches that emphasize an ethical aesthetic return to home. Becoming soil as a journey holds a profound significance. It's not a nostalgic return to a familiar physical place, like Homer's Odysseus returning to Ithaca. Instead, it emphasizes a journey to the unknown. But what exactly becoming soil entails? Becoming soil weaves together the symbolic significance of soil with the tangible sensations evoked by experiencing soil's diverse forms. It condenses the politics of reclamation with the activists of remediation. It moves beyond the conventional notions of soil remediation as a quest solely for recovering a lost fertility. Instead, becoming soil encounters a deep appreciation and entanglement with the mysteries of the ongoing process that breathe life into soil, emphasizing the importance of being present in our interactions with the physical world. It also awakens the spiritual and intangible dimension of soil's mysteries. What I propose is 2 concepts. The 2 concepts that I propose are to understand becoming soil is the actuality of soil and the potentiality of dirt. So for a minute, for a few seconds, maybe we can ponder what is soil, what is dirt, and why this distinction is important. So on one hand, attempting to understand soil through definitions is a formidable task. Soil is both tangible and is intangible and elusive. It is it's like if we try to grasp a handful of soil, it just crumbles and escapes from containment. We have many words for soil in the English language, which includes dirt, ground, land, humus, loam, regolite clay, ashes, substrate, to name a few. All of these just encapsulate some aspects of soil, but does not define what soil is. What I propose rather is to see soil as a sensuous relational web that seasonally is composing and decomposing life forms, including also pollution, atmosphere, and water, and the micro and macrocosm that makes all life on the planet. Soil also is simultaneously global and ubiquitous. However, soil is inherently local and contextual. And as such, it influences art, politics, and science. So soil is a living being that allows us to weave the intricate relationships of life, death, and decomposition of all matter. So what is dirt? Going back to this distinction, dirt is not soil. And I learned this from the worm farm and from Jay at the garden and from Donna from the conversations. Dirt is soil that has been stripped of the web of connections. It doesn't have the riches of life, and it has lost also its micro and the macrocosm that because it has become homogenized, decontextualized, and colonized, especially by agro-industrial practices and excessive urbanization. So the term that I propose in the potentiality of dirt emphasizes the qualitative aspect of dirt and its capacity for transformation. I draw inspirations from philosophers such as Gilles Deleuze and Félix Guattari when they talk about becoming. And what I quote is that becoming dirt yields nothing but soil. Also, this concept aligns with the concept of dynamism, which is illustrated in the dynamic relationships that dirt allows to change into soil, creating new tangible realities. Reaching the composition becomes a democratic process for all. So to close, I'm just going to say that becoming soil transcends philosophical abstractions, evolving into a praxis of potentiality of dirt, an invention of meaning in the remediation of soil. Thus, soil reclamation emerged not as a symbolic journey, homework, but a transformative mission, a process of becoming soil to rediscover our home. And I'm going to pass to Anna now.
Thank you so much, Maria Patricia. And thank you so much, Jay and Donna and Dejan, for those amazing ideas and concatenations that are really blowing my mind. I've written my part, so I'm going to read it. Blossoming in the open region. Blossoms or flowers are often thought to be harmless, beautiful, and feminine creations of nature. They have been likened to a stereotyped notion of the feminine, powerless, and pleasing. Flowers embody what is most sexual of all beings at all times and in the open region. There are no innuendos, veiled assumptions, or games of nebulous sorts. They are the plant sex organs opened freely to the world. Being hermaphroditic, they are not at all a metaphor for only the feminine. They represent the masculine and the feminine together, just like a yachak who strives to be a balance of both energies. Within all their harmless beauty, a flower could be a deadly poison or a marvelous remedy. In Silvia Rivera Cusicanqui's words, Andeans take into account that plants are koya. What heals you can also kill you. They could be carriers of the worst maladies and calamities, as well as the bringers of health and well-being. No such notions as delicate and feminine apply to them, although they have been given such lame functions in the salons and courts of Europe and the Americas since the modern era. What could blossoming mean in a forever changing context? No longer the recipients of the delicate, the feminine, and the powerless, but powerful sentient beings full of charms and properties, flowers might well be an image of the cruel and gruesome, albeit sweet and delightful, game of life and death. As much as flowers mean life and hope, they also remind us of their immediate demise, rapid decay, and death. The image of the woman sharing a flower with a soldier in World War II, the flower next to the gun, Guns and Roses, reminds us of the fragility of life. Blossoming is then the hour of transition, the very transient stage into something else. At all times, a maturation process that gives way to death. Why do flowers give humans such pleasures then? On one hand, they are the closest to humans' own ability to express beauty. Such creations of the soil, air, and sun show an astonishing aesthetic capability, which has been attempted to be reproduced by artistic mediums since the beginning of human expressions through art. But the flower itself, its aroma and shape, its color, is a supreme creation unparalleled by any other human task. It is remarkable then to realize that plants, beings capable of creating such unsurmountable beauty, would be thought of as lesser beings, and their creations, flowers, not thought of as culture. This is not the case for Amazonian and Andean indigenous communities. Every single plant and animal is believed to be capable of culture in the same manner as humans are. Thus is the immanent notion of nature as inseparable from culture and vice versa. On the side of imagination, Emanuele Cocha conceived plants as beings able to imagine and transform the world. In imagining themselves, they turn into flower and then into seed in the most excessive sense of the notion of creation. In his own words, open quote, "The flower is a cosmic attractor, an ephemeral, unstable body that allows one to perceive, that is to absorb the world and to filter its most precious forms in order to be modified by it, to prolong one's being there in the place where its form would know not how to lead it," end quote. The flower then is an hermaphroditic receptacle that opens up and closes in within a complex relational alliance with insects, birds, air, soil, and sun. It envelops the openness and the clarity of day and the dark opacity of night. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Now I'm going to pass the word to Sam and Wildcare.
Thank you, Anna. I wanted to say, first of all, thank you to everyone for coming. I am so honored to be able to participate on this panel as part of the plant contingent. Plants make us waver. They entangle and implicate us. They implicate our being, connecting us to each other, whether or not we think we have a choice to do so. And I wanted to say very specifically, thank you to my plant contingent, my fellow plants, because to be part of this, we've all had to die a little bit to ourselves in order to be part of this community. And it got real. It's been real and it's been beautiful. And it's been one of the brightest communities that I've been able to participate in. And Andita, I want to say thank you so much for everything that you've done to hold us together, even from such faraway places. And then to have these moments at the worm farm with Anna and Patricia, where we were so very close. It's been really a beautiful entanglement. So I just wanted to thank you, each of you, for that. So I'll go on. Plant ontology acts both above and below, provoking us to think with our whole being instead of just privileging the eye and the head. Plants spread their limbs in extravagant gestures to reach every possible atom of light, while also conducting clandestine operations underground, communicating and strengthening their hold on each other and the ground to which they are bound. These bodies blur the lines between death and life, as what is visible may die off, only to be reborn in a new form, in a new season. Plant bodies show us how to negotiate the violence of suffering. New tendrils sprout where limbs are severed, and new life is propagated in the voids formed from loss. Shoots push up through our material being, and that's the thing that I find so amazing about what plants have done for me. I can feel them. I can literally feel them now. And let me see, they help us to grow. They draw us insatiably to grow onward. And in this way, we're constantly reshaped by plant thinking. The dynamics of decay and growth in the forest, where I'm from, offer a particularly compelling vision of how we as humans might reorient our relationship to change deeply. For instance, the grief that comes with the human prospect of loss, like standing deadwood in the forest, is like a snag in being. It is a somatically inscribed and perpetually wavering state that opens the human threshold to encountering new ways of being. And by remaining in these uncomfortable and vulnerable conditions of wavering grief, the boundaries of what is living or dead, what is here and not here, and what is self and not self becomes softened. The forest is full of hollows and voids, which are the dark sites of loss and potentiality. Like the grottos of the underworld, the hollows of the forest are both vacuous and fecund, where the worlds of death and life meet. Instead of the fatality of death as an end, these hollows provoke a sense of what I call fetality. Fetality, present in the cavernous womb and wombs of the woods, is the most potent site of growth within the hollowing of decay. Fetality turns death on its head, resisting telos in favor of possibility and awakening the sense of being here, but not here yet. Within this context, death becomes a catalyst for the kind of change that cannot be envisioned or thought. In order to grow, plants must show us how to embrace the 1,000 tiny deaths that are experienced over a life, along with the 1,000 new beings that we also might become. Being, as energy acting through material, constantly breaks through the boundaries imposed by human perception, opening us to the wild side of care. There. Thank you.
Thank you. Just take a moment for everyone to absorb the rich soil, seeds, and atmosphere that we've created here. Some beautiful concepts, and we're open now. We have a nice amount of time for questions and discussion. If you are able to, you feel free to unmute and ask a question, and ideally maybe something that could be answered by all the panelists, or addressed by something that intrigued you. And if you would like to post it in the chat, I will read it out loud.
Hello.
Yes, please go ahead.
What a amazing treat to be here in this extraordinary evening, and all of these contributions about a new consciousness, plant ontology. And a question I have is around this question of death. Death appears to be something that is large and dead, in the sense of a silence. But what I've heard from all of you is that that is almost a mirage, an illusion. And I wondered if, from the perspective of Donna and Jay, this wonderful celebration of fermentation as the starter of something out of an old season into a new season, and all of the other wonderful snag, the dirt that appears to be inert, that is about a disconnection. Where do we find a reconnection with life in a time where things can feel like there is a distance to that kind of a new beginning?
Thank you so much for your question. Would you mind just, if you are comfortable, to state your name, because we do record this, and your question was so beautiful, and then I'll pass it on to Jay and Donna and Sam.
Yes, my name is Kate Farrington, and I'm sorry I can't change my name from Zoom user, but so beloved friends of many people here. Thank you.
I will jump in on this right away here. So, yeah, I mean, for all the talk about death and decay here, I mean, it is with a distinct lack of morbidity, right? I mean, this is death as a creative process, death as a procreative process. So even though there's this, the theme, death and decomposition, it's really this part of this turning. I mean, I personally have sort of devoted my creative and other energies toward conviviality. And I really like the Latin roots, convivo, with life. And so while, the inevitability of our end, and all of our ends, and all biologic end is always out there, and I think it's immensely healthy to try and embrace that reality and incorporate that into one's daily existence. But it really reminds you to take hold of this brief moment that you have on the crazy blue ball, and use the gifts that have been presented to us, and explore them fully. And then, your inevitability becomes less, traumatic, perhaps. I'd hope, anyway. That's my fervent wish.
Thank you, Jay. Donna, do you have a addition to that comment?
Well, that's it's a big question.
Yeah.
I do think about this subject a lot, and with fascination. So I think, what is more alive than a dead tree? I mean, when we see it in other species, it's a subject to behold and rejoice and celebrate. And but when we're talking about our friends and our family, it takes another turn, the word you used. But those two experiences are related, and I liked what Sam was talking about. The voids of loss are instantly populated with new life. So if there's a way to take a lesson from the plant community and invest it in our thoughts and fears about the human community, then that would be lovely.
Can I say a little something?
Thank you, Donna. Go ahead,
yes.
Sam.
Yes, Donna, I was just, and also Jay, I'm thinking about this, the fact that we are so wrapped up in trying to get away from our own trauma. As humans, trauma becomes this bad word itself, and a feeling that is not great. But that wavering of that traumatic moment, I think, is the opportunity of brokenness. It's that it opens up the wound and it keeps it open for us to become less in. And it is scary. And we have these feelings I'm just seeing this on a daily basis, you know, in my experience of loss in my life. And it's a necessary terrible feeling. It's a necessary terrible to get to the necessary joy, but it's not in order to get to the joy. It's part of it. It must come. It's that other side of the vibration. So I'll let that.
I would like to say something about that. The other day, Maria Patricia and I were talking about our differences towards Heidegger's sense of notion of Dasein, and how the ontological, I said the ontological question about being is posed when one is held out into the nothing. Dasein is being held out into the nothing. And she said to me, I don't agree with that. And I said, well, you don't really have to agree. But then she kind of inferred that, she said, yeah, but death is not really the nothing. And that really got me thinking a lot. And, you know, I have been thinking about that because we have been talking so much about what it means to be in that soil, you know, and to become soil, and to become one with dirt, one with soil, one with earth, and be populated by all these beings, and then become one of those beings, warm, plant, root, mycelium, flower, bee, whatever. And then, you know, death becomes something completely different. And that has been on my mind since we had that conversation. And it utterly changed my, I'm not going to say that I don't like what Heidegger says, because I do, I like Heidegger. I like being in time. I like his proposition of the ontological question of being. But then, you know, that nothing became populated by all these beings. That is so incredibly amazing, and such richness to be thinking that that is in the soil. And that is what awakens us, of course, in the soil.
Oh, now that I have the microphone open, I'm going to add something. And for me, the question about that is, it really has to do a lot with the environmental situation that we live in, because we have to remember that our bodies are already hyperaccumulators of toxins, and that when we die, we're going to bring these into the soil. So I think for me, the question of that actually brings not the same anxiety as the Heideggerian anxiety, but actually different kind of anxiety. Is the anxiety is that my carbon footprint extends into when I'm going to be dead, and then I have maybe I have no more agency at that moment. So I think about what is how do I live a life that when I die, when this body dies or transforms, has less impact in terms, so I actually stop this carbon footprint. I do not have an option. You know, there's a wonderful artist that had done a beautiful project that is called the Infinity Burial Project, and she proposes that through this mycelium mix, or she speculates more than anything, that through this mycelium mix, she can do three things, and one is expedite the process of decomposition. The other one is clean the toxins, and the third one is add nutrients to the soil. So, you know, like this beautiful speculation is something that really kind of gets me very excited about it. So, and I think that's all I'm going to say of that on this end. So maybe, I don't know, if somebody else wants to add something else.
Are there any other questions or comments?
I have a quick question about dirt for either Jay or Patricia, maybe. In just thinking about dirt being, I feel a little sad. As a vital materialist, I think about all material kind of being animate and alive and having its own being. And so I'm kind of sad to say that dirt doesn't. It's hard for me to call it inert. And I'm wondering if maybe, is there something about homogeneity that might be sleepy? Or I don't know, is there another way that we can think about dirt in this world where decay is also alive in a way?
Well, I really appreciated Patricia indicating that I had given her some greater insight into the distinction between soil and dirt, because I'm not sure that I don't remember that. I mean, I do distinguish between them, but I don't remember any exegesis on the differences. I mean, you know, the soil has been very eloquently explained here. This living polyculture upon which all of our existences depend, right? Dirt, maybe dirt is sort of like a weed. It's like soil out of place, right? If it's not where it can realize its full potentiality, here we go, using my plant contingent language here, then when it becomes disconnected from its network, you know, then I think that's when we sort of lose that sacred nature, the once described as the ecstatic skin of the earth. So the soil, you know, out in the field is one thing, but the soil on your pants, right? That's now a problem. That's dirt. You know, all the other things that are dirt. I'm thinking just, you know, today how I got dirty, because every day I'm somewhere where things accumulate onto my being. Usually, fortunately, usually clothes. You know, and working in a hoop house and pulling up some vines in the frozen hoop house, and the old tomatoes that stained my pants now, and those, you know, when I can get those things into the compost pile, they'll turn into soil. But when they're you know, disconnected from their original source, which was to be this you know, this fruit that we enjoyed, this concentrated packet of energy, and then it's a stain on my pants, then you know, then we've sort of, again, we've broken that connection where it is a place where it can sustain us and becomes then something else to deal with.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the question too. I think what I've come to terms with that, as I'm also kind of a materialist, vital materialist myself, is that I make this concept about the potentiality of dirt. So it's not just dirt, it's that dirt is in a latent state. And I think I said that at the beginning when I was reading my notes, but also through the concept of potentiality is, I actually find a remarkable similarity with your concept of that filling the void in the snag. So it's this with the concept of fatality that you mentioned. So the potentiality is everything there, you know, like a potentiality from dynamism, and so dirt is I think it's important too, because in a way we live kind of, our life is dirt now in a little bit, you said, and we are in need to add this richness of organic content, of social content, to reconnect it again. So thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other comments yet, then I'm going to take my position as moderator to ask a question.
Nandita, there's a question that someone who is FW wants to ask, I think.
I will read that comment. So would you like to read it for me or would you like to talk?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, so I don't know who this is, but it's a wonderful comment. This is fantastic. I love thinking about dirt as colonized and delocalized soil. I have heard that dirt is social and soil is geologic, biologic. Those are great distinctions as we parse out these words. Thank you. I see. Francis Whitehead, thank you so much. And I'm sorry to read your words, that they were wonderful. Thank you for that contribution. I had a question that maybe connects something, a word Dejan said and Anna on flowers. Thinking about the concept of animation. And we talked about we may animate non-human things or give them human qualities. Is there a way through art and the aesthetic that plants, flowers animate us through our senses and feelings? And I know I'm putting this very simply, but I know that both of you might have something to think about, that hinge between animation and the aesthetic.
Yeah, Anna, do you want to go first?
No, you go ahead first, Dejan. Please.
Fine. Yes, I think it's, you know, the way you intuitively already feel and posit it. And then many of you are artists, so you know this better than me. But certainly the objects, I think, even just objects, let alone living organisms, affect us and kind of work through us. And, you know, this is what I meant also when we talk about relationships, not to think of relationships in terms of here is an individual and here is an individual, and then there is some kind of a relationship here, but we remain separate individuals. But everything is affecting everything else all the time. And I think, Nandita, you are working on, or maybe mentioning in your research, a concept of hylozoism. And if you are, maybe you can mention that as well, which I think is better than the term animism. Because in animism, we tend to personify plants or animals or objects. Hylozoism, I think it's a different distinction because there is no personification. It's just an attitude or a perspective that takes the entire universe as a living organism. So, you know, now let's take that aside if it's scientifically true or not. Perhaps it is, perhaps it isn't, but it certainly helps us when we imagine things. So, you know, I am, in that regard, and we are all embedded with everything else in this immanent sphere we call life. And there's the fact that we see these radical separations, including separation from death, is just another mirage. It's just another imagination that is coming from very specific regions and areas, namely human institutions, that tell us since we are born who we are, and you know how the world is different, and create all these distinctions between us and everything else. So yeah, I'll stop there.
Thanks, Dejan. Yeah, and to add on to that, I wanted to answer Nandita's question through the sensorium. We just had an amazing experience on Saturday, and we opened this possibility of sitting with plants again. And it was truly incredible how we discussed this, Patricia and I, how it was very easy for us to connect right away with a plant and sense and feel what it was communicating to us. And it was such an amazing experience that the people who were there were able to feel also and to embody this becoming plant. So it was like really an embodiment, an embodying experience, an incarnate experience, because there is something that happens when actually we are, let's say, manducating or ingesting a beverage made of a plant, food made of a plant, and we are next to them. So there is this communication that happens no matter how or what we dislike or disbelieve. It is not a matter of believing or not. It is not something that is, invented or imagined. It is something that happens, and we were able to feel it. So that becoming plant really was possible through this workshop slash performance that we have been engaging in. And we are also amazed by the results. I mean, it's always surprising what happens when it happens. Here's a question.
Thank you, Anna and Dejan. I do want to acknowledge that we are at 7:18, and if it's possible, and if we've opened up this great conversation, we have 2 questions in the chat. I wanted to go to Chris. Do you want me to read your question, or do you want to unmute and read it or ask it?
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt people, so I didn't want to lose my question, so I typed it. Sorry for the long typing. But yeah,
and let me just briefly introduce Chris Holland. Is my coordinator in the Strange Tools Research Lab at the University of Cincinnati College of Design, Architecture, Art, and Planning School of Art, and we work pretty closely together, and I was also his student, so great collaboration.
Go Bearcats.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate this discussion. It's really interesting, and to see what you're up to, Nandita, and your many hats. Yeah, I was just thinking about a comment raised earlier about this asymmetrical relationship with plants. I think was raised by somebody, and what it would take to restore some sort of symmetrical relationship. And then I was thinking about an artist named Mel Chin. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he has this really cool project that will probably last 10,000 years, where he takes plants and uses them to heal brownfield sites. So he plants plants that leach out the chemicals, sort of like turning the dirt back into soil, maybe. But considering the sort of the terraforming we've done of almost the entire surface, like, can we even imagine what that would take to recover that at a global scale? And I just am pessimistic about like a human's ability to sort of create a phytoremediation project or some sort of dirt to soil project on that scale. I just want to know what your thoughts are in general about that, if that makes sense.
I'm just going to take that question because actually I've written about Mel Chin project extensive, and I think his project is very beautiful, but we are so fortunate that actually we have Frances Whitehead here with us, and she also has a fantastic project of phytoremediation And I don't know if maybe Frances will give us a little insight on her project. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I just want to say how fabulous this is. I already did. And just feel like Alice in Wonderland that has gone in and found another consciousness. So I'm so excited to be here. I don't know what I could tell you. I did do a big phytoremediation project. It went on for years. Melchin got the ball rolling, but the science has moved along considerably in terms of both identifying plant species, understanding processes, understanding the difference between accumulators and hyperaccumulators, which is a really important distinction, because just because you take up pollutants doesn't mean you take up enough of them to matter. So a lot of things have happened, but also just to connect some of the dots here, one of the big players in phytoremediation are actually the soil microbes. And every now and then someone would bring up the question of creating a genetically modified soil microbe that might do a better job with, I was working on petroleum impacted soils, but it turns out that it's not even necessary, because the native microbial community that is in the soil is so complex and varied and vigorous that it is highly competitive for a niche. Every microbe has to have its own niche, and there are no niches available. So if they put a genetically modified microbe into healthy soil, it can't compete because it has no niche. So there is actually no reason to do it. That's just a factoid that seemed to belong in this conversation. So I'll leave it at that. But I'm really glad to find you guys and to be here and to learn all of you. I've been researching on the side who everybody is and what they do. And it's great. And now I'm sitting in the dark, so sorry about that.
Thank you. Thank you for that work and explaining some of those intricacies. And you did have a question. Did you want to go ahead and pose that?
Well, it wasn't really a question. But you know, I didn't answer the person who asked about the Melchin's work and the othering. You know, I think it's like so many things that have been brought up today, which is that the scientific hypotheses that are formed are a reflection of the limitations of the Western episteme. And so one reason I have been an artist involved in a lot of places where artists don't usually go, to be my favorite thing, which is an epistemic disobedient, is because I say artists ask a different question, we get a different answer. So I think that there's a lot of othering going on, that we can also other the episteme. This is one of the things that we're doing. And I think that as an art, one of the really paradigmatic art science transdisciplinary collaborations that Mel's project was, he kind of anticipated where that has evolved into, that where we are now, where we can really, people like Mignolo have really taken on the limitations of the Western episteme in a productive way and given us this language like disobedience. I think we must be very disobedient, because most of the problems are the product of the Enlightenment, in my humble opinion.
Thank you. I think it's a good point to close. What do my fellow plants have? Any closing comments?
I just want to say thank you so much. I mean, gosh, thank you, Frances, for being here. Thank you, Dejan. I forgot to thank Donna and Jay and Dejan and everyone who else has been here. It's been, what a gift you all are to be here today. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. I would love to stay and talk forever with you guys, with everyone. It's been amazing. It's been quite an amazing week, I have to say. Panel and performances and reading cards and sensorium, and then this is like really a gift and a blessing and a blossoming. So thanks.
I also want to acknowledge, I think Linda Weintraub is here, and maybe it's under Andrew Weintraub. So thank you also. She's a big mentor for me and a big inspiration as well. So, and of course, it's a delight to see my very good friend, Kate Farrington here. Thank you so much. She's also a plant at heart. So from here from Ecuador, we send you lots of love from the center of the world. And we hope to have you here sometime, all of you. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for making the time to be here and engage with these ideas with us. And hopefully propagate some rootlings and seedlings and seeds wherever you might plant them in your corners of the world.
Thank you so much, Nandita, for making it so smooth technically.
You're welcome.
Bye, everyone.